Hi, everyone. This is Coach Bina Kavalam, and I'm really excited today to have with me Nolan Melson. And he is a first year at UT Austin, but he's also on the South by Southwest Advisory Board for Innovation. And so we're going to talk about his dual roles as well as what we plan and all the exciting things that are planned for South by Southwest so that you guys will get involved and hopefully join us at South by Southwest 2020. So with that, let me introduce Nolan and he can introduce himself.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Coach Bina, for having me. So I'm Nolan Melson. I was born and raised in Iowa, went to high school in Los Angeles, ended up going to West Point for college, was an Army officer, was a tech startup co-founder in Austin. And then for the past 4 years, I've been doing tech consulting with Capgemini. And ultimately, for the past semester, I've been at UT Austin Maccombs getting my MBA. And really enjoying it. But back in 2018, I was a panel organizer and a speaker at South by Southwest 2018. And that was an amazing experience. The topic of that panel was transitioning veterans from the battlefield to tech careers. I can talk more about that later on. And then in 2019, I was selected for the advisory board for South by Southwest Innovation Awards, then doing that again for this year as well. So happy to chat more about my experiences.
Fantastic. Perfect. And you are with Coach Anita. So thank you, Coach Anita, for having such a great fellow. All right. So with that, you mentioned a little bit about how you got involved with South by Southwest. How can MLTers who may not have the veteran connection, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so thankfully South by Southwest, they offer a discounted student badge. So the best thing that you can do is just, get a badge and fly out to Austin and actually attend. There's so many amazing panels across a number of topics, from innovation in connecting cities to AI, machine learning, social impact, so many different topics. And there's not only South by Southwest music and film, but also interactive. So in years past, I remember in 2018, I got to attend a party with Elon Musk and Ashton Kutcher and Snoop Dogg. It's crazy. It's like South by Southwest is this experience that you just have to go, and you never know who you're going to meet or what panel you're going to be attending. And it gives you an opportunity to really engage with so many different people from various backgrounds who are passionate about technology or film and so many different topics. So I would just advise students, just come out, show up, and have a great time and attend some awesome panels.
Awesome. Awesome. And, so you mentioned just, getting the ticket, getting out there. There is that still discounted ticket. I believe it's still valid. Well, you have to check that because it's heading out. It's getting really close. We're about a little bit more than a month away from South by Southwest. I was there for the interactive portion. Did you stay for the entire event?
Yeah, so I've stayed for the entire event for the past 4 years. So usually it's 2 full weeks. The first part will be the education piece, and then it'll go into film, and then music, and it'll go interactive, and then into music. So if you can make it, let's say you only have a limited amount of time, I would say definitely stay for the interactive, because as a MBA, that's where you're going to get most of your opportunities to network with different leaders in tech or in social impact. And even during the interactive, there's also great, concerts at night, great sponsored parties. And it's just a really fun time. And there's also a career fair as well. So for some of you who are still out there recruiting, it's a great opportunity to meet some of your future potential employers.
And the one thing that I went to South by Southwest for the first time last year, and one of the things that really stood out to me was that there were each of the companies would have these houses where they would show their innovation, right? So they would take over a literal building, and they would create their own space, which was cultivated so you could see a little bit more of their culture, but it would also show some of their innovations. And I'm going to be honest, it really shaped my perception of the organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about the houses and what they're like?
Yeah, so last year I went to the Accenture Digital House, and they had a really great display on AR and VR, and you got to put on the headsets and see some of the different digital offerings that they have. across AR, VR, and in haptics as well, so sensory sort of systems. I've been able to go to the Facebook house the past 3 years in a row. Both Twitter have also hosted parties. Samsung last year, actually, Dell hosted a party with Wycliffe Jean. He performed, and they had all of their like Dell gaming Alienware laptops on display that you could test out as well. So you can go to these events that companies will sponsor, and not only can you see real new innovative tech, but most likely they've paid some Grammy Award winning artists to perform that night. So it's really cool how in one day you can get you can see some of the new emerging tech, but also get an amazing experience all packed into one day. So that's one of my favorite things that I really like about South by.
And typically you can just walk into the houses. You don't really have to have like a formal ticket to experience the house. Am I right? Or
yeah, so usually the houses they'll have both official, some of them will accept official badges, so they'll have a separate badge line where you can scan in. But also if you do not have a badge, then they'll allow you to RSVP online, and they'll have like a separate line. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but usually as long as you get there early, you'll still be able to get in. So for example, last year, Twitter hosted an amazing panel. It had Mark Cuban and Arlen Hamilton, which was all about just diversity in venture capital. And it was just a really cool panel. It was open to non-badge holders as well. So it was just a great platform outside of official South by Southwest panels to be able to see, different innovators within venture capital or entrepreneurship, and to see them in a forum that's just very, very, very thought provoking. And so I really like that. And that was the Twitter house that's on Rainy Street. It's this one street here, downtown Austin, that will just have like 10 or 15 different companies that'll sponsor different little bars all along that street. And it's just a really cool kind of eclectic little way to see just so many different ideas, and so many also like different clash of style and fashion, right? People come and they're all dressed up in some really cool outfits, dressed a lot cooler than I am. But it's just really cool just to see the clash of fashion and tech and music all in one place.
I mean, for me, it was such a unique experience as well, because when I went there, I had no idea what to expect. I mean, I had heard stories, but never really experienced it. And, getting to be up close and personal with so many, not famous people, but you know what I mean? You're in the same room, you're hearing them, you're listening to them. For me, I got to hear Meg Whitman from eBay speak, Howard Schultz of Starbucks. I didn't get into the Trevor Noah event because, again, their lines are very long, and if you don't get there early enough, sometimes you can miss out. So can you talk a little bit more about like what are some of your tricks of the trade, or like recommendations for how to maximize the conference?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because every year I still will find myself very overwhelmed because there's so much going on all at once. So I first went to South by in 2014, and I had no badge. I was just happy just to try to get into parties. And then I saw people who had badges, and I always thought, wow, it'd be so cool to have like an actual badge because you can get into everything. And then 2 years later, I actually get my first platinum badge, and I realized that there's so much going on, and there's also so much FOMO, because you hear about this party over here and that party over there and this panel over here. So it's really crucial that you, if you do get a badge, that you do a lot of planning beforehand and create your own schedule. And thankfully, South by, they have an app, and you can link your badge to it. So you'll see all of the panels that are going on, and they'll be available. So as soon as you download the app, I recommend you make your schedule of some of the panels that are really musts that you have to go to, and then some that are just kind of like I would like to attend. And then make sure you have a plan of action for like how to get from that one panel to the next panel, because sometimes they're at hosting different hotels all throughout the city, but it might be, a couple minute walk, or you might actually have to take an Uber to the next place. Usually you can walk almost everywhere, but make sure you have a plan of action to get from panel to panel. And then for nighttime, for the parties, make sure that you have your and most of the official parties will be posted on the South by app. However, some of the other parties, you'll actually have to do some digging. So there's a South by Southwest party Facebook group that will post all of the RSVP links for the different official and unofficial parties that you can attend. So I recommend that you join that group, you RSVP to all those parties, and you just create your list ahead of time so that you know exactly, hey, it's 6 o'clock. I just finished this panel at this bar on Rainy Street. Now I want to go over to the Samsung party, which is on West 6th Street. And this is exactly how I'm going to get there. So it's all about just planning ahead of time. But I think you have to also be willing to, like take a chance and realize sometimes there's going to be so much going on. You just kind of got to go with the flow and, kind of see where you end up, because most likely it'll be a really good time. So just be willing to adapt and try to plan ahead as much as possible.
I completely agree with that. I will say sometimes you just get overwhelmed by how much is out there. And as a South by Southwest newbie last year, I did not plan, and that was my downfall. I didn't plan anything. I was like, oh, I'll just go into an event and see what happens. And then the line was around multiple corners into another building, coming around. It was ridiculous. So definitely planning is such great advice. And the other thing too, I think is the logistical piece about how you're going to get from one place to another. That's important too. Like, don't just think you can just, I'll just jump over to the next place like really easily. There are a lot of people. You need to budget time, and make sure you've gotten your, plan out what are the must-haves in your schedule, like the absolute must. Cushion a little time in between, to just, get lunch and do other things that you might need to do, and make sure, you can squeeze in those other things as well that you want. One thing I would recommend as well is make use of the time that you're standing in line. There were so many people who were on their phone and they're not talking to the other people in line. And one of the things I love to do is just talk to a random stranger in line. Not a lot of people do. I happen to be one of those people that will be that annoying person to say, hi, how are you? I'm Bina. And just have a random conversation. I met so many cool people that way. And because of the nature of South by Southwest, everybody's pretty cool. I mean, and people are really interested in just getting to know you. I met some really cool journalists from Oslo. I met, who did I meet? I meet a photojournalist, another photojournalist from Australia, and she was amazing. She's a producer as well. We've actually started keeping in touch, and we just met in line for Trevor Noah, and we both got rejected, so we were in line for 40 minutes just talking. And so it was just a great little thing that we were able to connect with. So I would also encourage you to find some of those times, but you're going to meet people at parties. And the other thing too is what are some of the best ways to maximize the experience after South by Southwest? So there's definitely planning. You're going to meet people at the event. What do you do afterwards?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So over the past 5-6 years I've been going to South by, I always find myself like with a stack of business cards and trying to figure out like when I should follow up, when's the best time to follow up. I really think it's important that you have some sort of organizational system to collect all of those business cards and emails, and that you create a plan for when you want to send those follow-up emails. Usually I'd recommend like waiting a couple days after South by, because during South by, let's say you meet somebody at the first part of South by and you want to send them an email, like you send them an email the next day, South by is still going on. Most people still have their out of offices on because they're fully plugged in to the event. So I wait maybe like 2 days after South by and say, hey, great meeting you at this party or at this panel, yada, yada. We spoke about this. I'd love to follow up with you and have another conversation about this particular topic that you spoke on at the panel, or however you want to frame it, but just make sure you actually do follow up, and that not too much time passes, because I've done it like in a bad way where I met somebody who I thought was going to be a great connection, and somehow I just never got around to following up, or their business card slipped out somewhere. And so you need to make sure that you actually do follow up and you organize all those contacts. You're going to be meeting so many people, especially in line. You're you're going to be taking pictures of their badges, right? Because they're not going to have business cards. Some people carry them, some people don't. They'll say, hey, just take a picture of my badge. Add me on LinkedIn right now. Just make sure you organize all of those contacts and you actually do follow up. And I recommend, especially if the person is, let's say a director or a VP at some company and you really want to try to get on their radar, follow up not only with what you spoke about when you both met, but also something very relevant that maybe recently happened in their field, or maybe you read an additional publication that they put out on LinkedIn and you were really intrigued by that. But just make it so you're not just another contact they met at South by, but somebody who actually is interested in what they do and in their firm and their own background. And that's a good way to differentiate yourself, because you're going to meet people at all different levels of seniority within, one of your target companies, most likely. So you want to make sure you follow up in a different way based on their level of seniority or impact in their organization.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Kudos. That's exactly right. Because you want to follow up and don't just do what everybody says, which is just click the link in LinkedIn, and then it just sends out this really generic message to them. Don't do that. Be the person who's going to write, add a note and write a nice, a cogent email that's relevant to them, that's going to stand out. You don't want to just blend in. They're going to get 50 to 60, maybe even more contact requests after being at South by, especially if they're on stage. Oh my goodness. Yes. They'll get so many. You want to be somebody who can stand out. If you listen to their panel, mention something from their panel that you thought was excellent and quote it, write some notes, take some notes and say, I thought your point about blah, blah, blah was really interesting. I did that once for a speaker. I was at an I was at an Internet of Things event, and I met with the global director of Internet of Things at Accenture. And honestly, I don't have any background in Internet of Things. I just happened to be at the event to network. I mentioned this to him, and then we ended up having a conversation afterwards. We talked on the phone afterwards because he liked my thoughts about moving it to a different industry. It was totally unexpected, but a really great, nice benefit. And it wouldn't have happened had I not taken notes while I was in those sessions and I had something to talk about and mention. So I encourage you not only to do the follow-up, but to prep for the follow-up. Make sure you're taking notes, get a notebook or something so that when you're in these events, you're jotting out some of these ideas that are coming to you, because you're going to get so many ideas and so many, sparks of brilliance, okay, during these events, because that's what happens when you get to events like this. And so make sure you have some way of capturing it, whether it be, on your phone or something like on a notebook or something. So you have that, and then you can reference it later. Because when you're in the moment, it's going to happen so fast and quickly, you'll forget it. Anything else that you wanted to add in terms of ways, pre-work that they should be doing before the conference?
Yeah. Well, just to piggyback on the note-taking aspect, I'd recommend a lot of people, when you're in a panel, right, especially if it's a panel you really want to go to, you're probably going to be in the first or second row. And having spoke at South by Southwest on a panel before, you look out into the crowd and you're feeding off of the crowd's energy. So if you see some people will just literally just be on their laptops, head down in the crowd the whole time. The majority of people will be on their phones, just trying to send out tweets, yada, yada. But you have a few people who you can tell who are really, really plugged in the entire time and following along. And then they're going to most likely ask really well-pointed questions. So I'd actually recommend, if you're going to take notes, get an actual physical notebook and be in one of the first two rows and take the notes in the notebook so that the speaker knows that you're actually really plugged in and maybe not just sending out tweets on your phone. And so that way, when you come after the panel and you want to follow up with that and speak to that speaker directly, they're like, oh, I remember, you seem really plugged in. You're asking good questions. You weren't on your phone the whole time. And that's just another way to really differentiate yourself. And I've had good success when I follow up with different panelists. And they could tell, they're like, hey, I saw you seem really plugged in. You're asking good questions. So it's just another way to really differentiate yourself. But it is really important to make sure you're organizing those notes effectively, because you're going to have so many different ideas and different ways that you want to follow up, or maybe different ventures you want to launch based on who you met or what you saw at South by Southwest. So it's important that you kind of create that strategy going into South by of what you really want to take away from this experience, because it is a big investment of your time and your money, and a lot of resources. So you want to just have that plan of action just to make sure that, hey, if I don't see anything at all, I want to make sure I attended, these 5 panels. I want to try my best to connect with these maybe 2 or 3 different people. And then this is really what I want to take out of it. And thankfully on the South by app, there's South by Southwest Social. So you're able to go into that portion of the site once you have a badge, and you're going to be able to see different people who will be attending South by Southwest and the different backgrounds that they have. You're able to see what companies they work for. You're able to put like little tags. So I'm interested in AI or social impact or Internet of Things. And so you're able to see people who have similar interests as you, and you can actually send them messages before South by Southwest and be like, hey, I'm attending this panel. And you can also see who else is attending that panel and say, hey, love to connect with you there before or after the panel. I saw we have a similar background. So it's just a very effective way of doing very targeted networking, so that you're ultimately not just networking, but you're connecting with not only hopefully the panelists, but people who will be there in the audience as well. And I've had very good success when I've done that and been very intentional with my networking at South by.
Okay, so I was just taking notes on what you said there, because that was a moment of brilliance, right? What you said, it was pre-event. Make sure that not only do you map out what are some of the big events that you want to attend to, but go through who are the speakers at the event. And some of they only have it for speakers. They don't have it for attendees, right?
No, so you can see who clicked on a specific panel, like who's attending. So again, you'll see a list of the people who've actually clicked that they're going to be attending as well.
Okay, so it's for attendees and speakers. So you can go through and you can see who's going to be there, and then send them a quick note. Is it you can send them a note through
in the website? In the website.
Okay, that's brilliant, right? So you can send them a note, so that's another way to stand out. So you're doing this before you get to the event. Then for the ones that you really care about, you're getting there early and you're sitting up front, you're taking notes in a notebook up front, so you can again make that next impression on that person. And then again, you're going to be following up after the event, 2 to 3 days after the event is over. You're sending out a note, a really custom note to the person, so you've got another touch point. That's 3 major touch points with this individual that may help make the difference to help you get at least a contact, but potentially even enroll in that company and tech down the line. So I think that's excellent advice, and that's a great way to build your network, that you're not just liking somebody on social, right? It's a different way when you're meeting in person, and they're much more sticky, those type of networks, right? Because those are the ones that really matter. You can have thousands of people like you on social, but the ones that you really stand out to you are the ones you meet in person, and that make a difference and stand out from the rest. And that's how you do it. So anything else that you want to add, Nolan, that might help our fellows make a difference at South by?
Yeah, I have so many.
Good.
So many nuggets. So another one, if you really want to connect with a panelist, it's really important to have your social media strategy down. So thankfully, in the panel description on the website, usually they'll have the Twitter username for that panelist or their LinkedIn. But I recommend trying to find that Twitter username for that particular panelist, and then taking a good picture, a really nice picture during the panel, and then having a small little quote either from that particular panelist that you really want to make sure that notices you or you want to connect with, and then making sure that you have that picture, you post it, and you tag ideally all of the panelists on that panel. And then even if they're an organization they're affiliated with or a company that they work for that they're speaking on behalf of, and tag them in that picture. And I found that for South by, Twitter is usually the best platform to use. Mm-hmm. And so when you post a really nice picture with a really good caption, a quote from one of the panelists, usually they'll like it, they'll follow you back. It's a good way of kind of having that stickiness with that panelist, and also getting you some traction during South by Southwest, right? Because hashtag South by Southwest 2020 is definitely going to be trending all over the world at that time. So you want to maximize all of that traction and make sure that you're not just posting a whole bunch of content, but really top content. And most panelists, you know, they'll love to hear their own voice. So if you have a quote that makes them look really good and you post that on their Twitter, most likely they're going to like it and then they're going to retweet it, right? So that's also going to get you more following and just more stickiness with that panelist. And really just a social media strategy in general is really important for South by, like how you want to do it. Maybe you want to do, you know, one picture per panel or maybe a couple pictures per day, but come in with the strategy of how you want to really leverage your social media during South by Southwest so that you can create really, really good content. And not only just with social media, but I'd recommend, you know, having writing a blog, right? So putting all of your pictures all together at the end of South by, and then writing a really nice, maybe making like a Medium post, something that you're going to want to post on LinkedIn at the end of South by. And in that blog, you know, you can tag the different panels you attended and different panelists. And just something like, hey, you know, my experience at South by Southwest 2020, and just going into more detail about that, sharing more about your experience beyond just tweets. I think I've seen a lot of blogs do really well or even launched from South by. So just another thing to think about if you want to go in that direction.
Nolan, that is gold right there. That's so gold because I've done that at other conferences. I haven't done it I did it with MLT, but I haven't done it as effectively last year. I remember I did this at one women's conference and I took a picture and I met Dory Clark. She's a great author and well-known influencer. And I tagged her and I wrote an article about what I saw at that event. She retweets it around Thanksgiving timeframe because that's when I did it. So I became, my little article always gets a bump now because she retweets it in her cycle every year at the same time. And so I get a bump in that article every year because of her. So this can have long-term effects for your impact and social media strategy. So having a plan is gold. Really gold. So in terms of preparation, it's not just about packing and getting the right things to go. It's about thinking about who do you want to be, who do you want to see when you're at the event, thinking about collecting their social media, logons and all that stuff, and making sure you're having that ready to go and the hashtags that you want to use, and then following up later with the blog post about your event and the great pictures that you've really used to capture that event. Excellent. Anything else you want to add, Nolan?
Really, just hydrate. You know, you start attending panels at 8 a.m. and you're going all throughout the day, and then there's parties throughout the day, and then of course parties at night. So you definitely, you know, want to pace yourself, hydrate, eat good food. Every like little house will have like a lot of free food that they'll be giving out, but you don't just want to eat every little, you know, appetizing looking thing. Make sure you take some time just to relax, like sit down and have a meal with some friends, because there'll be so much going on and you're going to want to sit down and have a good meal and just kind of reflect. And as you said, being in line, like you'll be tempted to be on your phone, wanting to send out tweets or follow up, looking at the schedule. Take that moment to just look around you and see who else you can just strike up a conversation with, because you never know, you know, who you're going to meet. So yeah, I'm excited for people who attend, and I look forward to, you know, meeting those of you who choose to come out here to Austin for South by.
Awesome. Thank you, Nolan, so much for your time and for your great strategies that we can use for South by Southwest. This will be going out there, and would it be possible for folks to reach out if they have any other additional questions?
Yeah, you can just, you know, add me on LinkedIn, Nolan Melson, or shoot me an email as well, nolan.melson@utexas.edu.
Awesome. Thanks again. Take care now.
Thank you.
All right. So I think, oops, no.